Here comes the Cavalry. All of a sudden, just like that, it kind of feels like Cav season. The North Star Cup winners from a season ago struggled at times. It was a little bit of a yo-yo season. We saw some very good play from Tommy Wheeldon Jr.'s side and a team that struggled through large stretches, especially away from home. With all that being said, it seems like it's Cavs season once again after a dominant 4-1 victory over York United last weekend. Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt with you. It's Canadian Premier League semifinal. Our coverage begins 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. TSM will join us at 4 p.m. Eastern Time as Forge hosts Cavalry, the biggest rivalry there is in the Canadian Premier League. I just wonder going into this game, which club does this matchup mean more for in terms of coming away with a victory here? Is it Forge or is it Cavalry?
This is a tough one to answer. I think on the surface, Cavalry obviously needs it more in terms of they haven't secured qualification for the CONCACAF Champions Cup next season. Forge have, and Forge have a trophy in the cabinet this season, and Cavalry don't, although I will say that neither set of players has actually touched a trophy this season, so maybe there's still that to play for on the Forge sides. But I think it's a bigger story if Forge lose, because it would be the first time, obviously, that happens, that we have a CPL final that doesn't feature Forge. So in that sense, it kind of feels like Forge need it more, as much as the practical implications are more from Cavalry's sides. It would be a pretty watershed moment, I think, in the CPL if Forge were not playing in the Canadian Premier League final.
I just think that this is such a great opportunity for Cavalry to put their stake in the ground, because oftentimes, for all the success that Cavalry have had, I mean, it must drive them crazy hearing Forge this, Forge, like all the time. And that's because Forge have been in every single Canadian Premier League final there has been. And on the balance of titles or championships or silverware, Forge has the edge. But to be able to go into Hamilton Stadium back-to-back years, that would be a statement just to the Canadian soccer world saying, you know what, no, Cavalry, we're the big dogs, and it's time for them to kind of move aside. And there's every reason that they can make that happen this weekend, Ollie. Like, this is basically the same team that beat them twice in the playoffs last season, including that 1-2 match at Hamilton Stadium a year ago. They've added Gauthier and Tigny into the equation, which makes them even more dangerous attacking down that left-hand side. And aside from Sergio Camargo, it seems like they finally found some rhythm, including their big man up top, Tobias Warshevsky, who absolutely loves to play Forge. He said it himself. I mean, he has five goal involvements in his last 3 games, playoff games against Forge. And he reminds his manager all the time, I have never lost a playoff game, coach. That's what he tells Tommy Wheeldon Jr. So, can we consider potentially Cavalry being a favorite heading into this game, despite them playing away from home here?
I don't think they're favourites. I think you've still got to take into consideration with Cavalry. I do think a couple of the absences are key. Sergio Camargo, obviously being a big one. Gutierrez hasn't been playing either, and he was important last season. But more than that, it's just they've got to demonstrate they can go away from home and defend in a competent way, because it hasn't happened in recent weeks for Cavalry on their travels. Like, the last 5 away games, 2 against Vancouver, 3 against Pacific, these are goals conceded, 3 against Atletico Ottawa, 3 against York, and 2 against Ottawa again. Like, it's not been good enough from them on the roads. You look at that group and players like Dan Klomp and Callum Montgomery, Marco Carducci, and yeah, you absolutely think they're capable of better than that. It's just a case of whether or not you're going to get it, and they haven't had it in recent weeks. So I can't make them favourites just based on that, because I can't feel confident in their ability to keep a clean sheet at the minute. And I think if you leave yourself needing to score more than a goal, it becomes a very difficult game at Hamilton Stadium.
These games are typically tight. They're cagey. Like, the number of games that have been settled by just a goal between these two teams, it's crazy. It just, every game is so close, but there has been the exception. Like the 4-1 win at Atco Field just a couple months ago, where Cavalry, with the band back together, completely played Forge off the field. Don't you think that's the recipe for success, trying to play quicker? And if I was to look at the blueprint, the way forward for success, what did we see last weekend from Atletico Ottawa? they challenged Forge down the flanks and they picked up the pace of the game. And Reza Rama had a really difficult time dealing with Gabby Antonoro. I just look at this as being a game where Gauthier Antigne and the damage he can do, if he's getting the ball in space, trying to pull the midfielder over so they can't double team Ali Musi down the other side and really go out and challenge Rama on the dribble. I mean, that seems like a decent enough way forward. So I think that if Cavalry played to their strengths, despite all those goals conceded, you're right, they scored 28 goals in their last 11 games. So if things do open up to a certain degree, and Forge will feel pressure to do that playing at home, wouldn't you think that would suit Cavalry in a game like this?
Well, that's how Cavalry went about it in that 4-1. They targeted Gauthier Insigne, funneled everything through him, and he caused a lot of problems for Reza Rama and that Forge defense. So I'm sure they'll try that again. Forge adjusted in the subsequent game, which was a 1-1 draw. Hajabrapor kind of positioned himself right in front of Rama and gave him a lot more protection. The big difference there was that Ali Musi wasn't playing. And so maybe Forge could afford to sell harder to their right-hand side, knowing that there wasn't as much threat as usual on the opposite flank. So Musi obviously changes that equation, gives Cavalry much more threat, much more balance on both sides. And I think absolutely Tommy Wilding Jr. is going to be looking at his wide players and the Forge fullbacks and thinking that's the key to success, as much as obviously Warshevsky is going to be a big factor as well.
And I'll say this, Hajabrapor and where he plays is going to be critical because Kenija Alva came into the game to lead the line as a number 9. I thought it worked with Tobias Warshevsky dropping deeper, which he naturally wants to do. Then the Forge midfield and defenders need to make a decision on how they approach this. Remember, Warshevsky was unplayable. Forge just couldn't put a glove on him last year. I know that Dan Nimick wasn't there at that time, and things have changed to a certain degree, but the complexion of this Cavalry attack is a lot different than it was even a year ago when they were successful.
Yeah, but from the Forge side, I think you'll look at that and say, well, if they're going to play Insigne, Musi, Warshevsky, and Elva, some of those guys are going to have to do some defensive work. So let's turn that against them and see if we can maybe, ask those guys to track back a little bit more, see how much of that they're willing to do. And if not, can we get some space and some freedom to our midfield players as a result of that? So I think it could work both ways, but undoubtedly you look at that Cavalry front line and it looks like a dangerous prospect and one that's capable of doing some damage in this game.
Forge has only lost one of their last 11 against Cavalry at Hamilton Stadium, but that one game was the biggest of the bunch. It was last year in the 1-2 game. This will be the 10th playoff meeting between Forge and Cavalry, and we cannot wait to see how it plays out. Atletico Ottawa are waiting at home to see who they will host a week from now. But first, it's the next chapter of Forge and Cavalry. 3:30 on OneSoccer, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Our friends at TSN join with kickoff shortly thereafter.